Alright, Shalom. First and foremost, I want to start this lesson off by giving all the praise, honor, and glory unto Yahweh, Bahashim, Yahweh Shai, Bahashim Rakakudash. Double honors to the apostles and elders of Great Millstone. Honors to all the brothers who are firmly pushing the word in sincerity and in faith. Shalom to all the sincere believers. Now, this lesson is going to be, based on, in particular, these protests that have been happening in regards to, what ICE has been doing here in America. Assaulting people, murdering people, and basically, the division that is taking place in this country. Because on one side of things, you have the people that are anti-ICE. They're against ICE and against what ICE is doing. And then on the other side, you have the people that are cheering it on. And, they're okay with what's happening because they don't think it's going to happen to them, which it will happen. Stuff like this, ICE running around, kidnapping people, assaulting people, murdering people. This is basically just a test run to see what they can get away with. How far can they push things before, all hell breaks loose and the citizens start fighting back. That's what this is. Things are only going to get continuously worse, and eventually civil war is going to break out in this country. But I'm going to read some of these headlines, get some precepts, and Lord's will, you're edified. So it says, anti-ICE protests intensify after Border Patrol fatally shoots Minneapolis man. It says governor wants federal agents out after Pretty killing. It says anti-ICE protests held downtown Chicago after federal agent killing of Alex Peretti in Minnesota. It says Warriors Steve Kerr voices support for Minneapolis amid ICE occupation protests. It says, and this right here is where the division kicks in. It says video Kash Patel says Americans can't bring loaded firearms to protest. So you have one side that's all about the Second Amendment and people have a right to have their guns, and to carry their guns. But then on the other side, they're being told that they're not allowed to bring their guns to protest or, certain places. So that right there is division in itself. It says hundreds of Minnesota businesses closed to protest ICE presence. Demonstrators flood Minneapolis streets as hundreds of businesses close to protest ICE. It says police arrest clergy members amid ICE protests. It said protests in Chicago area against deadly Minneapolis ICE operations in sub-zero cold. Says Minnesota judges continue to reject arrest warrants in ICE protests. And then you see this situation here in regards to Iran and the protests that are happening over there. So things are just popping off all over the world. It says protests in Minneapolis after man shot dead by immigration agents. Protesters call for ICE patrols to end following ICE shootings in Minneapolis. So, like, this is what's going on in this country. You know, there's a lot of division. And if you look on social media, especially on TikTok, you'll see it. You'll see videos, you know, one person saying that they're against what happened and that it was clearly a murder. Those ICE agents murdered that man. And then you'll see another video where people are basically condoning, what the ICE agent did, you know? So there's two sides of it. And Luke 12:51. Suppose ye that I am come to give peace on earth? I tell you, nay, but rather division. And that's exactly what the Lord is doing. The Lord is using these different events to cause division. And clearly it's not just here in America. It's in these other countries as well. Because you even have protests happening in different countries because Trump is over here talking about he's going to take over Greenland, you know. So you have people protesting about that as well. And not just here in America, but, you know, across the world. So there is no peace on earth right now. There's a lot of division. There's a lot of anger. There's a lot of violence. And the violence is only going to get worse as the division gets worse. The definition of division here says the act of separating something into parts or groups, or the way that it is separated. And like I said, you have one side that is completely against what ICE is out here doing. Just snatching kids from schools, snatching people from work, snatching people off the streets, you know, going into people's places of work, snatching them out, you know, breaking into people's homes and snatching them out of their homes, you know, stopping people on the road and snatching them out of their cars, you know, just all sorts of just unhinged, unchecked wickedness. And then on the other side, you have the people who are all for it. You know, they're cheering it on because they think that it's never going to happen to them. But what those people who are cheering it on don't understand is that it will happen to them. They think just because, as the elder Malcolm likes to say, you know, these people think that just because they're bending over and taking it and just allowing, you know, wickedness to take place, they think that it's not going to affect them. But Renee Good, that white woman who got murdered by ICE, and then this recent murder by ICE of Alex Peretti, you know, who's also a white man, or an Edomite, I should say, that's proof that them running around here saying, "Oh, I'm white," you know, that doesn't matter anymore. Like, so-called white people can't run around and use that whole thing of them being white to, you know, get them out of receiving judgment. Because you had two cases where so-called white people, a so-called white man and a so-called white woman, got murdered by these ICE agents. So clearly their quote-unquote whiteness didn't protect them. And then You have a lot of videos on TikTok coming out of so-called white women talking about they're going to divorce their so-called white husband because they realize that if ICE were to, break into their home, that their husband wouldn't try to protect them. They realize that their husband is on the side of ICE. So, there's so much division happening. Relationships are being torn apart because of this. And that is division in itself. The Lord is causing division on all different levels. You have so much anger in this country because everything is falling apart and both sides are blaming each other for why it's happening. And while both sides are blaming each other, the people in power are banking or making money off of the chaos. Ecclesiasticus 33:14. Good is set against evil, and life against death. So is the godly against the sinner, and the sinner against the godly. Verse 15. So look upon all the works of one against another. And that's right. You have up and down. You have left and right. You have hot and cold. You have Israelites against Edomites. You have these pro-ICE people against the anti-ICE people. You have the Democrats versus the Republicans. That's what the Lord is showing, that division, one against another, one side against another. And all of that's going to do is just lead to violence. Because people are starting to realize that, hey, in this country, you really can't do anything. This was supposed to be the land of the free. People were supposed to be able to do things that you couldn't get away with in other countries. You're supposed to have freedom of speech. You're supposed to have the right to bear arms and to carry your gun and all of that. Of course, so long as you're doing it legally. You have your gun permits and everything, and you're not harassing people with the weapon or anything. If you just have it on your person or in your backpack or in your car, then it's not a problem. But yet, clearly we see that that's very quickly going away. People are getting censored if you say certain things that certain people don't like. You now all of a sudden you're not allowed to carry your own firearm without, the threat of ICE agents murdering you in the streets. So there's major division happening. Things that used to separate America from the rest of the world is no longer doing that. A lot of people from other countries came to America because America was so different. People could say what they wanted to say. And, because they had freedom of speech here in America. There was a lot more quote unquote freedom. You could dress however you wanted. You could marry whoever you wanted. You could have whatever kind of job you wanted. You could just do basically anything here. But all of that is going out the window. And that's just going to lead to a lot more chaos and violence, because you have the people that are trying to fight for that freedom, and then you have people that are like, nah, we need things to be more strict around here, you know. And that division is just going to lead to more clashes amongst the people. And soon it's going to turn into the people against the government. And like I said, that's where the civil wars and the race wars are going to come into play. You see the men of the Lord, starting of course with the apostles and elders of Great Millstone, have been talking about this, have been prophesying that we were going to get to this point. And there is no turning back. The Lord has already got the ball rolling, so to speak. And it's just going to keep going, and things are just going to get continuously worse. So for all you sincere brothers and sisters, stay prayed up, because all hell is about to break loose out here. Stay prayed up and continue to watch as well. So you're always aware of what's going on, so that you're not caught off guard, when things really do go full blown. No, that's not what I want to hang on. Second Ezra 15:16. For there shall be sedition amongst men, and invading one another. They shall not regard their kings nor princes, and the course of their actions shall stand in their power. And that's what's about to happen. More and more people are going to be showing up to these protests with guns. Not because they intend to do anything, but to protect themselves, and in their mind to protect each other. Because clearly, these ICE agents don't care. They're just attacking people really without cause. Pepper spraying people, beating up people, murdering people. So people are going to start showing up to these protests with their weapons. And then as soon as these ICE agents start acting up, all hell is going to break loose. And these people, they're not going to listen to the ICE agents. They're not going to listen to the police. They're not going to listen to their mayor or their governor. And they're damn sure not going to listen to the president. These people, they're going to start taking matters into their own hands. Because people are starting to wake up to the fact that the government is not for them. The government is against them. And in their mind, if they don't do something, all of their rights are going to be taken away. A lot of people are having that mindset of desperate times call for desperate measures. And people are starting to realize that the only thing that Esau understands is violence. That's the only thing that's the only language, so to speak, that these ICE agents and law enforcement and the government itself understand is violence. You protesting out there peacefully, marching, just chanting whatever these people are chanting, that doesn't get you anywhere. So people are starting to be like, well, if doing it the nice way, if doing it the peaceful way doesn't work, then maybe we should try it a different way. And that different way is a more violent way. Because what's more than likely going to happen is, like I said, people are going to start showing up to these protests strapped up with their guns. And then when these ICE agents start assaulting people, people are going to start gunning down these ICE agents. And then you're going to have the pro-ICE people going out there to fight the anti-ICE people, and then it's going to just turn into full-blown war. Just full-blown war in the streets. That's exactly where this is going. And those of us of the hopeful elect, we are not to get involved. We stay out of it. This is not our fight. We don't care about this place. Let these people who love America fight for this place and die for this place. This is not our fight. We are not supposed to be at these protests or any of that. We're supposed to be foreseeing the evil and hiding ourselves. Proverbs 22:3. A prudent man foreseeth the evil and hideth himself, but the simple pass on and are punished. And that's right. I'll have the definition of prudent here, and it says careful and avoiding risk, cautious. So that's how we're supposed to be. We're supposed to be cautious and careful and avoid risk. And clearly going out to these protests is going to get you caught up in something. So the wise thing to do is to stay away. Don't get involved. This has nothing to do with us. It has to do with all of these people who want to, save America and all of that nonsense, which there is no saving this place. The Lord is going to nuke this place off the face of the earth. But like it says, a prudent man. So a cautious man foreseeth the evil and hideth himself, but the simple pass on and are punished. And majority of these people are simple. That's why they're out here protesting and marching and all of this. Because they're simple. They don't understand that everything that's happening is the work of the Lord. These people that are getting kidnapped by ICE, getting assaulted by ICE, getting murdered by ICE, they don't understand that that's all the judgment of the Lord. Like it says in Psalms 9:16, the Lord Yahweh is known by the judgment which he executeth. The wicked is snared in the work of his own hands. Higgaion Selah. So all of this is judgment. Those two Edomites that got murdered by those ICE agents, that was the Lord's judgment upon them. Just to let these Edomites know that they're not safe out here. Just because they're so-called white, that's no longer going to protect them. But because these people are simple, because they're stupid, because they're carnal, they're going to continue to go out there and protest and march, and things are going to continue to play out the same way. And it's just going to get worse. And those of us of the hopeful elect, we just got to sit back and watch it play out. Knowing that all of this chaos that's about to happen is, just bringing us one step further to the kingdom of heaven. So with that, I'm going to wrap it up here. In closing, I want to give all the praise, honor, and glory unto Yahweh, Bahashim, Yahweh Shai, Bahashim, Rakakudash, the Wadi Yahweh, Bahashim, Yahweh Shai, for putting the spirit on me to do this lesson. Double honors to the apostles and elders of Great Millstone. Honors to our brothers who are fervently pushing the word in sincerity and in faith. Shalom to all the sincere believers. Hope you all stay strong, stay safe, stay fervent, stay circumspect, stay prayed up, and Adawan Ratazah. Till next time, Shalom.